The Mary Celeste. You've heard the name, right? It's practically the definition of a ghost ship. For over 150 years, the story of this ship, found sailing on its own, completely empty in the middle of the Atlantic, has just completely captivated people. So today, let's dig in. Let's really try to separate the facts from all the fiction surrounding one of the sea's greatest mysteries. And we're going to start our story not at the beginning, but right at the moment the mystery begins, the day the ship was found. Okay, so picture this. It's early afternoon, December 4th, 1872. You're a sailor on a ship, out in the vast, empty expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, and then you spot another vessel. But something is really off. It's just not sailing right, it's zigzagging, the sails are all torn up, it's just drifting. And as you get closer, that's when the real chill runs down your spine. There's nobody on deck. Nobody's at the wheel. The ship is completely, hauntingly silent. And this right here, this is the one question that has echoed for more than a century. Where is the crew? So, the ship that spots it is a Canadian vessel, the 𝗕cie, and its captain, David Morehouse, is just stunned. Because, get this, he actually knew the captain of the Mary Celeste. Their ships had left New York only about a week apart. The Mary Celeste should have been arriving in Italy by then, not floating aimlessly out here. So when the crew of the 𝗕cie finally boards the Mary Celeste, the scene they find is, well, it's just bizarre. It's like a puzzle where none of the pieces fit. First off, the lifeboat? Gone. Okay, so you're thinking orderly evacuation, right? But wait, all the crew's personal belongings, even their money and valuables, were still there. The ship was stocked with enough food and water for 6 months, and the cargo, over 1,700 barrels of alcohol, was pretty much untouched. Now, there was some water in the hold, but not a dangerous amount, and the last entry in the ship's log was from 9 full days earlier. None of it made any sense. To even begin to understand what might have happened, we've got to go back. We need to meet the 10 souls who were on board for that final, fateful voyage. And it's so important to remember, these weren't just names in a history book. These were real people. Captain Benjamin Briggs was known as a solid, dependable man. He even brought his wife, Sarah, and their little 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, along with him. The crew he hired? All experienced, reputable sailors. By all accounts, this was supposed to be a totally routine trip across the Atlantic. And this, right here, this just drives the tragedy home. It's from a letter Captain Briggs wrote to his mother right before they left. He sounds so happy, so content. He loves his ship, he's looking forward to a smooth journey, and he's just thrilled to have his family with him. There's absolutely no hint, no shadow of the disaster that's about to unfold. Okay, so here's the timeline, and this is where the mystery really takes hold. Look at that gap. The ship leaves New York on November 5th. 20 days later, on the 25th, they make their last log entry. They're near the Azores. And then, nothing. Complete radio silence, so to speak. For 9 days, that ship sails on by itself, a ghost ship, until it's found hundreds of miles away. What on earth happened in those 9 days? So the crew of the 𝗕cie manages to get the abandoned Mary Celeste all the way to Gibraltar, and this is where the official investigation begins. And honestly, where things just get even more confusing. You see, under maritime law, if you find and save a ship, you get a reward, a salvage award. But to figure out how much money the 𝗕cie crew deserved, the court first had to determine why the Mary Celeste was abandoned. And that official inquiry, well, it ended up creating more questions than answers. The investigation was led by this guy named Frederick Solly Flood, and he was immediately convinced something terrible had happened. His theory? That the crew got into the cargo, got drunk, murdered Captain Briggs and his family in a rage, and then escaped in the lifeboat. It's a dramatic story for sure, but the evidence just wasn't there. For one, the cargo was industrial alcohol, basically poison. You couldn't drink it. Plus, there were 0 signs of a fight or any kind of violence on the ship, and everyone who knew the crew said they were good, peaceful men. Solly Flood's whole case it fell apart. He claimed some cuts on the ship's bow were made by an axe. Experts said it was just natural wear and tear from the sea. He found stains he swore were blood. Analysis proved they weren't. In the end, the court had to admit there was no evidence of foul play. But get this, they were still so suspicious that they gave the heroic crew of the 𝗕cie a ridiculously small salvage award, which basically tainted their reputations for years. The whole official inquiry was a bust. So when the official investigation comes up empty, you create a vacuum. And you know what fills a vacuum? Wild theories. The mystery of the Mary Celeste became a blank canvas.
and people started painting some pretty crazy pictures.
I mean, people suggested everything. You had the plausible stuff, like a freak seaquake or a massive waterspout hitting the ship. Okay, maybe. But then the theories get way out there. Pirates! A giant squid attack! Aliens! The Bermuda Triangle! You name it, somebody probably suggested it.
But look, we can pretty much toss most of those right out the window. Pirates? Come on, they would have stolen everything, but all the valuables were left behind. And the Bermuda Triangle, the ship was found thousands of miles away from there. As for a sea monster, well, it's hard to imagine a giant squid carefully taking the ship's navigational tools before leaving.
And you want to know what really cemented the story in our minds? It was a fictional short story, written in 1884 by a young doctor who would later become world-famous Arthur Conan Doyle. Yep, the guy who created Sherlock Holmes. He wrote a sensationalized tale of murder and revenge, and he changed the ship's name to the Mary Celeste. His story was so popular that people started confusing it with the real events, and that incorrect name stuck around forever. All right, so if we rule out pirates and sea monsters, what are we left with? What could possibly cause a veteran captain and his capable crew to abandon a perfectly good ship in the middle of the ocean? Let's look at the one theory that is the most logical and has some real science behind it. Okay, so follow me on this. It all comes down to the cargo, that industrial alcohol. Remember, 9 of the barrels were found empty. The theory goes that they might have leaked, filling the ship's hold with highly flammable fumes. Captain Briggs, maybe unfamiliar with this cargo, hears a rumbling or smells the fumes and fears a massive explosion is about to happen. So he makes a split-second decision. Get everyone off the ship as a precaution. They all pile into the single lifeboat and they tie it to the Mary Celeste with a long rope, planning to wait it out at a safe distance. And then, the unthinkable happens. A freak gust of wind catches the sails just right, the ship suddenly surges forward, the rope snaps, and just like that, they're separated. 10 people in a tiny boat watching their only hope, their ship, sail away from them into the horizon. Now I know what you're thinking. An explosion? But the ship wasn't burned or blown to bits. And that is the absolute key to this theory. We're not talking about a huge Hollywood explosion. Alcohol fumes can create something called a pressure wave explosion. It's a dramatic whoosh of flame and pressure, definitely powerful enough to blow the hatches off and terrify anyone who saw it. But it doesn't leave behind the charring and scorch marks you'd normally expect. And this isn't just a guess. Scientists actually tested this. Back in 2006, some researchers at University College London built a scale model of the ship's hold and proved it. They showed that an explosion of exactly this type was totally possible. A blast that would be terrifying, but would leave the ship itself looking almost completely unharmed. And that's why this theory is so compelling. You know, it just ticks all the boxes. It explains why they would have left in such a hurry, it explains the missing lifeboat, and it explains the lack of any major damage to the ship. It paints a picture not of some supernatural event, but of a terrible, tragic miscalculation. A split-second decision made out of fear. But, and this is a big but, we can't ever know for sure. It's still just the most likely story. And that's where we're left, with a logical, scientific explanation that can never be truly proven. It takes a century of ghost stories, of sea monsters and legends, and boils it all down to one single fragile moment. A moment where a rope breaks, a ship sails on, and 10 people vanish forever into the massive, unforgiving ocean. Could a single, snapped rope really be the simple, heartbreaking answer? It's a haunting thought. And maybe the real reason the mystery of the Mary Celeste will never truly fade away.